Back to Bookish and welcome back to my Saturday Hodgepodge. I almost forgot to shoot my Saturday Hodgepodge video this weekend. As I've said about a million times, I'm sure you're tired of hearing me say, I shoot my Hodgepodge videos on Friday and then I post them so that they're up on Saturday. So it's Friday afternoon, the school behind me is going to be getting out in half an hour or so. You may hear some kids yelling, some cars pulling up. Who knows what's going to happen back there. This should be a pretty quick Saturday Hodgepodge. I don't have a whole lot to say. So let me deal with kind of what I've been reading this week. So as a part of Indigathon, I've been reading books by Indigenous authors. I finished Tracks. I finished The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones, Tracks by Louise Erdrich. And this week I also finished Louise Erdrich's new book called The Sentence, which I hope to have a review done relatively soon. But what I would say is, just for us here on BookTube, this is a book lover's book. It's a bookstore lover's book. It has a lot of elements in it other than that, but I just found this to be, really enjoyable from that point of view, and I can definitely recommend it. Two of my other reads this month, since it is Nonfiction November, are not going as well. One of the books I wanted to read this month was The Dawning of the Apocalypse by Dr. Gerald Horne. This is essentially about the beginnings of the slave trade, the European-African slave trade which took place, and how that kind of set up the apocalypse of the slave trade and the destruction of indigenous Native American populations in the United States. This covers the 16th century and then the destruction of indigenous population. The real kind of kick into high gear of the slave trade takes place in the 17th century. This book has been hard for me to get into. Dr. Horne has a very distinctive writing style, which is a lot less simple than most people's, and his sentences are densely packed with vocabulary words, and so it is a style that I do find enjoyable once I get into it, but every time I put it down it takes me kind of a while to get used to the writing style itself. But I am looking forward to the content. I hopefully be able to pick that up over the weekend. And then I did start reading the other book of my Nonfiction November list, which was Past Imperfect, History According to the Movies. It was Zelda and her friend. I'm sure there'll be a lot of noise in a minute. Anyway, I read the opening kind of interview between John Sayles and the historian Eric Foner. Again, I think I might have mentioned this. This book is pretty old by now. It's more... It's more than a decade old, so there aren't a lot of new movies in it. Some of the historians who are kind of probably historians that more people would recognize their name at the time may have retired and be less the historians we think of today. But I did enjoy that interview. I love John Sayles' movies. I love Eight Men Out. Lone Star is one of my favorite movies ever. If you haven't watched a John Sayles movie, I can highly recommend those two. And he had a lot of interesting things to say about kind of the impact of Hollywood on, and why, movies about history or movies set in historical time periods are not necessarily all that interested in historical accuracy, kind of down to all the events and people, and much more interested perhaps in historical details like costuming and things like that. And he had a lot to say about that, and I thought that was really interesting. And I did start reading the first one of the essays, which is Stephen Jay Gould talking about Jurassic Park. And shouldn't surprise you to know there are a lot of things in Jurassic Park which, strictly speaking, are not accurate in terms of historical detail. Anyway, so that reading has been going on. Today, being Friday, we learned that the Kyle Rittenhouse verdict came out, and Kyle Rittenhouse was found not guilty on all charges. What upsets me about it isn't just that two people were killed and there'll be no justice for what happened to them, and a third man, by the way, was wounded. That in of itself is awful. But what it also means is, I'm afraid that kind of vigilante justice will become more common, and we will see instances like this happening more and more often, because essentially what the jury decided, and I'm not blaming the jury completely, I have some things to say about that in the prosecution as well, but what was decided in that case was that a person can claim self-defense if they are in possession of a legal weapon, they cross state lines, they're too young to have the weapon they have, they take a loaded weapon to place where there's likely to be a protest, ostensibly to defend a piece of property, leave that piece of property, are confronted by someone, shoot and kill that person, then run away, are chased by a crowd and turn and shoot and kill another person with another, and there's nothing going to happen, that all qualifies as self-defense. Now, you know, hindsight being 20/20, and me certainly not being a legal expert, I think the prosecution made a mistake in going for, you know, essentially first-degree murder charges, which, you know, I might agree that that's what he's guilty of, but, you know, that is also the hardest thing to prove. And, you know, part of me thinks if they charge him with something less, manslaughter, second-degree murder, then we may actually have some kind of justice in terms of Kyle Rittenhouse going to prison. But I find the decision to be incredibly upsetting, and I don't see anything to celebrate. Rittenhouse is not a hero. He killed 2 people. Whether we call it murder, whether he's convicted of murder or not, there's no doubt that he killed 2 people and he wounded a third. And for what? What good did he do? Did he protect any property? No. Did he protect or save any lives? No. He took life instead, and he went there for no reason, with no provocation, no reason to be there, and 2 people died as a result of that. That's nothing to celebrate, and he is far from a hero, and I'm certain the right wing in this country has already turned him into a hero, and we will see him more and more. I suspect President Trump will have him at the rally he's planning in Las Vegas soon. Anyway, that kind of thing sickens me, and so since I can give my opinion about politics and things, I thought I'd go ahead and do that here today as well. Some other things I want to talk about. I did want to shout out 2 specific videos which I watched today. One is from Ami, 16 something or other. I'll leave a link down below. Ami's doing interviews with authors, and he did a great interview today with a historian who is last name is Glegg, Dr. Glegg. I can't remember what his first name is, but again, I'll put a link down below, in which they discuss the book he'd written about the Obama presidency, which I just thought was really good and fascinating, kind of looking at the political realities and things involving the Obama presidency. And Ami does a great job in those videos. You should definitely go watch them. I don't watch all of them because sometimes the books are not things that kind of land in my area of interest, but you should go watch those series of interviews that he does with those authors, because they're really good, and he's a really good interviewer. Also, the channel Journey Through Stories did a review of Judith Schalansky's Inventory of Losses. That's a book I read this year or last year, and I had kind of, you know, a mixed reaction to it. But his review is great, and being a medievalist, you know, and a professor, he does a reading in Old English, which is just great. This week, sorry, Zelda hit the tripod again. This week, musically, for whatever reason, I started thinking about funk music, probably because I listened to one of my playlists has quite a few songs from Rage Against the Machine on there. One of my favorite songs to Rage Against the Machine songs is Renegades of Funk. And I'm not exactly sure that qualifies as a funk song. I'm going to say it is. I'll put it in the list down below. But that got me thinking about funk music and kind of, you know, my relationship to funk music. And I think I say this before, my musical interest is wide but not very deep. So, you know, you're not going to get a lot of deep cut things like that from me here in terms of music recommendations. They're just music I enjoyed, and not necessarily, you know, an area of music which I got deeply into. But I know for a fact the first time I listened to and enjoyed a funk music song, I was over at my neighbor friend's house. His name was Sean Eubanks, and he had a Commodores album, or his brother had a Commodores album, and we listened to the song Brick House, which, you know, probably in today's culture not necessarily appropriate in all ways, but just a kind of a joyful, happy song, and I still remember listening to it. And that's kind of the first funk song I listened to. Maybe the second funk song I listened to was George Clinton, We Want the Funk, probably his most famous song other than Atomic Dog, but I still have that on one of my playlists, and it makes me smile and happy every time I listen to it, as I think most funk music usually does. So I have that on the list down below, and then in addition to that, I have a song by Barry White, which is probably the, you know, most Barry White song, or the Barry White song most people think of, and that's Can't Get Enough of Your Love. I'm not sure that's a funk song either, but, you know, I'm going to put that down below. And then I have 2 songs from Fishbone, which qualifies as a funk band. I'm not sure if Fishbone is still around anymore, but there was a time in the 90s they were really popular, kind of a college band. So the 2 Fishbone songs I have is one, or I have 3 Fishbone songs. One is Everyday Sunshine, which is just a happy kind of song. Two is Skankin To The Beat, which is, you know, a great party song, as is Bonin In The Boneyard, which again, you know, you have to kind of take with the kind of happiness and joy and kind of fun music it's intended to be. But anyway, I'll leave those links down below so you can listen to that music if you want to. And I'll leave links to Ami and to Travel Through Stories, or Journey Through Stories. Is it Travel Through Stories? Journey Through Stories? I'll straighten that out too. I'll leave that link down below too. Anyway, there you go. There's my Saturday Hodgepodge this week. I look forward to your comments in the comment section below. And as always, thank you for watching.